Alright, Travis Wingate, so let's do government first, I guess, since we have an election coming up. and Amazon's not going to get here until about noon, depending on the driver's speed, but they bumped it up to noon is when it's going to arrive. I have Fantasy Island Season 2 and Season 2 of the Hardy Boys. My original completion or series of the Hardy Boys as didn't work, as it was part of the early days of trying to figure out converting DVDs to digital, and so I need to get those restored, especially Season 2, because that's where Arsenic and Old Lace is, where I knew the actress in that show, Amy Smyka, and if you're thinking you knew an actress, oh, I don't know Amy Smyka. Hardy Boys, huh? Yes, I'm that old. Amy Smyka was the little girl in the episode Arsenic and Old Lace, where the building caught on fire, and she was trapped up in one of the rooms, and Joe, I think, is the one who rescues her, not Frank, who Sean Cassidy. I'll put his song for the theme song. Cassidy, just to remind myself. Otherwise, I'll forget. But she was walking to school one day. Caught me at the same time I was walking to school, and as we were walking to school there in Placentia, she told me about how she had did a part in that show, and I remember it. I remember there was a girl in the show. I remember seeing her, but I was trying to remember the show because it had been a while since I'd seen the show. So yeah, that was my first experience with celebrities. And yeah, so cute. But yeah, government. We assume as Americans that our governmental system is the best in the world, although currently under Trump we are divided on that issue. The concept of dividing is for the purpose of conquering. And so the theoretical principle of government that involves dividing the nation is not a good system to employ if you're wanting to build a better nation. Just, as a matter of fact. So anybody that tells you that you must divide and be separated, which is segregation, you need to be cautious of such groups or parties or individuals. And thus, the words, the belief systems, the precepts that people present to you can be identified if you know the consequence, the results of such a system. And so with government, it needs to be a system that will not collapse after a period of time. And yet, time and time again, we always have those who purposely want to destroy government. not necessarily an enemy nation that knows how to do that as part of an art of war tactic. But you also have those within the government who, for whatever reason, establish a system that abuses the people and enriches the government itself, or the corporations, or causes division. And with the kingdom of God concept, we know from Joseph Smith that his concept was to include a constitution. As he says that it was inspired of God, not written by God. As some Mormons try to spread the misinformation of Captain Moroni appeared before them and said, "I am Moroni, I've lived on this land, and I want to warn you of the destruction." Yeah, none of that happened, despite Mormons having strong feelings on the subject. It's not sufficient to grant that we all be threatened to believe you. And yet, we know from the Constitution that it involves slavery, which had to be amended, and it didn't consider women as humans either, or full humans either. I think women aren't even considered humans because they're not even included, whereas blacks were considered 1/3 human or something like that. But women also needed an amendment in there. And so a constitutional government is understood as being part of the church, the church's kingdom for the millennium. But yet it's mixed in the sense that Mormons have the traditional understanding that Jesus Christ of the Gospels, who is of the Christian understanding, just not the Constantine Christ understanding of Homoousius, as Mormons believe he is a physical being and yet is still capable of defying the laws of physics. And forget that we're supposed to be the learning of the Jews in regards to our understanding of the Christ. But regardless, Mormons believe that Jesus Christ is going to come out of heaven as a physical being and come to Adam-on-Diamond, and there the Melchizedek priesthood will bestow upon him the keys of the kingdom, not the keys of Moses. If you don't know the difference between the key of Moses that Moses gave in the Kirtland Temple and the keys to preach the gospel of the kingdom that Peter, James, and John gave, no. But that after Adam-on-Diamond, Jesus is then going to go to Jerusalem and destroy the land and vanquish the enemies and save the Jews, as they're going to go right through the Mount of Olives that will be split in half. And there's Jesus on the other side, of whom they'll see the wounds in his hands and his feet, and they'll say, "What are these wounds in your hands and your feet?" And he'll then reply, "These are the wounds of which I was wounded in the house of my friends." And they'll go, "What do you mean?" Because Jesus did not save the Jews during the Roman period. And so that's where Mormons get confused with merging their doctrine with Christianity, or their mythology with Christianity, theology. And then Christ, after that, will then come back to Independence, Missouri, to sit on his throne, which has already been built, right? Yeah, that's why the church keeps pushing it into the future, because they aren't even bothering to try to build it. So yeah, this is all supposed to happen real quick and soon here. And yeah, it's not going to happen the way that Mormons think it's going to happen. However, we now have to figure out, well, okay, when Trump destroys America and the church flees, it leaves us to ourselves to build the kingdom of God, as we're all fighting for survival with militia groups that think that this is the day they've been waiting for and are murdering humans rather than trying to establish a better governmental system than what collapsed. Those who survive, if you are listening to this video, there are different types of governmental systems, and I'm doing this off the top of my head, so I'm not going to be presenting a full thing for you with pictures and diagrams and all that, definitions. But the Constitution, in Article 4, says we're supposed to have a Republican form of government. And so it's necessary to identify definitions of governments. You hear a lot of talk about how Democrats are either communist or socialist. They can't be both, because they're both different. So Democrats are supposed to either be socialist or they're communist. But as the enemy has divided Democrats, as progressives are now trying to divide Democrats to destroy it, as progressives think that they're going to conquer Democrats so that the Democrat Party becomes progressive. Similar to the Republican version back in 2012, was it? With the Tea Party movement. Under Obama, the Tea Party tried to destroy the Republican Party to conquer it so that it can then be a Tea Party rather than a Republican Party. But that also failed, as that then created a vacuum condition for which Trump was then able to emerge. And so progressives, are you sure you want to dominate the Democratic Party? Because you're going to create a vacuum with the vacuum that Trump's already created. That's why we're collapsed. We're due to collapse officially in the near future. Socialism. Society. It's a government run by society. Everything is for the whole, which is different than democracy. I'll get to democracy in a moment. And so it's kind of unclear how socialism is supposed to function among large groups. It doesn't really work under large groups. It's best in family, small group situations and settings, because everybody has to have the same mindset, that everybody does things for the whole. You don't do anything for the individual. And like I said, the more people you add to the group, the less effective it becomes, because you have to have everybody conditioned for the whole. Now, this is different than the government system that I'm going to recommend. As the introduction video told you that I already know, the best system to apply. But I have to lead you guys to understand this, because you've been misinformed as to the different types of governments. So that needs to be corrected in your mind first. And so there is no governmental leadership of any kind, no representative. A representative socialism is communism. There's the difference. But socialism in and of itself, regardless of what anybody tries to tell you, is society all thinking the same. They are Borg. But the Borg collective controls the Borg. And so the Borg technically aren't socialist either. They are a different kind of merged. They're like a socialist fascism with the Borg as the hive collective. I don't know if it's Gene Roddenberry, because I think he's dead. So whoever created the Borg are in essence creating a whole new governmental system with the advent of computer technology to brainwash the hive. And so hopefully we won't have a situation that terrifying to employ. But just to give you an understanding that there are different types that can be created and invented. But socialism is sort of like that, just without the computer hive manipulation. And that's why it's difficult to be of any effect to implement as society gets larger and larger. Because there's no government to govern. It's just all society does their part for the whole. But who gives the orders? Nobody gives the orders. Everybody just is supposed to do their part, and that's why it can't work as a system. And you've probably heard people say, oh no, you have people who are governing, who give the orders. That's not socialism. They're trying to trick you into giving you a different definition of socialism, such as communism or Marxism or other types of systems. So understand the difference. Socialism is government of the people, by the people, without a government. For the people, without a government. And so the difference with democracy, which in my view is even worse than fascism, though I go back and forth on that. Democracy also does not have representatives, but they vote for representation. No, that's representative government. You can vote for representatives. That doesn't make republic a democracy. That's where they've been deceiving you guys. They've been redefining these basic governmental system processes so that they can divide and conquer. Because, and so democracy is of the demographic, and it is better than socialism in that the people vote of what needs to be done. Rather than socialism, everybody's just supposed to be of one mind and know what needs to be done for survival. In socialism, for example, children that are born, there are no marriages, the children are born into the society. There was a Greek society, ancient culture, that tried something like this, but they still had a governing body, and thus it failed. But yeah, it was horrific. The Spartans employed something like that, but it wasn't quite socialism. But yeah, there never really has been socialism in place in the world's history, because it just doesn't work. Somebody needs to be the governor. Something needs to set the rules. And you can't have a unified thinking of people who are all different individuals, because everybody experiences things differently, and thus it creates a scenario where socialism fails because of humanity. So democracy, it's a majority vote of the demographic. That's it. That's all it is. So you need food. Okay, well, you have a majority vote as to how to obtain food and get it to all the people. And so every single detail needs to be voted on. And you can't have representatives. Democracy, under the definition of democracy, does not have representatives. Once you introduce representation, you are now a republic and you are no longer a democracy. That's why democracy is a failed system and is horrible. It just does not work. Because when the majority chooses and to implement something that results in the death of the people, it's too late to change things. It's too late to hold people accountable and responsible. It just fails. Also, the minority in society get discriminated against in a democracy. And so that fails as a system. So all these government leaders that are trying to say, oh, our democracy's in jeopardy, we need to vote to ensure democracy, they're giving you the changed definition. Hopefully they're not trying to deceive you by appealing to your misconstruing of the wrong definition with their intention of wanting to implement actual democracy. That would be horrific, worst case scenario. And so when we look at the Democratic Party, they're obviously not democratic. You have to look at their platform that they produce every election. All parties produce a platform of what they believe in, what they want to achieve, and what their goals and ideology are. And so the Democratic Party are a Republican form, which, as has been referred to once in a while when they're not being called socialist, is communist. It's a socialist republic, thus a party. And so it's kind of redundant to call our party governments parties. It's just the term. We are Democrats. Can't say Democrat Party, because by saying Democrats, you already are a party. So it's redundant to call yourselves a Democrat Party. And so pay attention to their platform, because progressives are supposed to comply with the Democrat Party platform. And they're not. They've got their own platform. Thus, they're trying to divide and conquer the Democrats. Just like the Tea Party was trying to divide and conquer Republicans. And likewise with Trump's platform. You'll notice he uses the wording from Republicans, the GOP, but his implementation, as we are made aware of, is not in the best interest of the people. when he says, oh, we want a secure nation, he's not talking about securing us other than locking us up if we are not loyal. That's the definition he's using. He's twisting the original definitions to manipulate the minds just to get them to vote for him, although he's purposely tanking this election. And so be careful with party government. They all fail. Communism fails because communism, as a representation of the people, a party, is discriminative. It's those who are loyal to them who put them in power. And so they discriminate against those who are not loyal to them, who are not putting them in power. For example, LGBTQ plus 1A, I think, is the latest updated version of them. Guys, seriously, you need to stop dividing yourselves into all these different groups, even though you're claiming you're being inclusive. Because what is the one sexual orientation group that is excluded from your group? You're looking at them. I'm excluded from your group, heterosexuals. There is no H in your LGBTQ plus 1A, whatever. And the 1A was like some other guy yesterday or the day before talking on one of the MSNBC shows. 1A? What? When did that happen? I just figured out that there was a plus. And so, yeah, heterosexuals are excluded from LGBTQ plus 1A. And so, yeah, it's a segregation system of governing where the United States itself has been turned into communism. We're not united, we're divided. Every state for themselves. Every state governs their own way and their own system. The only thing is that when there's a natural disaster in our state, we go to the federal government and say, hey, we want other states to help pay for our damage through the taxation system. And when we vote for president, every other government officer are voted within the state. So I was put in a situation as to whether I was going to vote for Romney or not, for example, for Senate. And I didn't, by the way. Nonetheless, there is a segregation in America. We are the segregated states of America. And that's for the sole purpose of destroying America. And so when anything wants to segregate, to create groups. Now I understand LGBTQ plus 1A got started in response to the bullying of conservatives. We all know this. I knew it growing up. My conservative peers were the ones horrifically speaking the words of Sean Hannity on the radio and Rush Limbaugh and their parents who were listening to those shows with their kids present, talking about all the atrocities of what they were going to violently and viciously and inhumanely and cruelly do to the discriminating groups that they were creating. They were creating the groups. Gays did not start off saying, oh, hey, I'm a part of this gay community now. No. It started off by bullying of people who were being bullied. And so then all this other stuff emerged. And so That's what we need to understand, is that the LGBTQ plus 1A, in responding to the abuse, actually fell into their trap. They created a discriminating, segregationalist party organization, just as the bullies wanted. You're human. All of us are human. That is the theory we need to be utilizing for a better governmental system. No 1/3 human, no non-human because they're female. Human. And so let me stop here, take care of some stuff, and then we'll come back into talking about the ideal governmental system. Alright, I'm back. So the kind of system we want needs to employ the precepts or principles that all humans, because if I were to say all men are created equal, women are going to get offended because of the abuse that they've received by bullying men. And thus they are trying to divide in order to conquer, which no, we can't have that kind of a system. So let me just say human, and hopefully everybody understands. We need to be on the same page with the same definitions for the same words. We cannot allow the enemy to instill incorrect definitions that confuse society as to what we're communicating to each other about. So that somebody's not saying, oh, we're a republic. Another says, no, we're not, we're a democracy. They're both using incorrect terminology in that argument, which is a bashing argument of arguing the conclusions rather than arguing premises, which are the definitions of what each are supposed to be. And so we need a system where everybody is therefore treated equally. The Constitution in Article 6 tells us the form of a republic that we were supposed to have. A constitutional republic. The Constitution in Article 6 is supposed to be the supreme law of the land. But, as we have seen, we are being attacked and destroyed because we are segregated states. States determine what they get to do for their state and don't need to follow the Constitution. And you'll even have government leaders of states say the Constitution is only for the federal government. No, you didn't read it, did you? It says that all states are to conform and to comply to the Constitution. So no, we're not supposed to have a governor of the state. That's a British term from the British government that we didn't get rid of. We're supposed to have a state president and a state vice president. We're supposed to follow the same pattern for the federal government. And we've never done this, have we? And so the laws are not supposed to be different if you cross any of the borders into another state. If I am old enough to buy a pack of cigarettes, which there's no way I would ever do that, but there are those who do, who are able to buy a pack of cigarettes when they turn 19 in one state and are able to legally buy it. Their parents or they move to another state when that no longer allows 19-year-olds. You have to be 21 to purchase cigarettes. You see where we're going with this? There are a whole ton of laws that are legal in one state but are illegal in another state. And this is causing great confusion and division. Thus is an attempt to destroy our nation by segregating us to cause this contention and division. Hold on a second, let me check the audio to visual matchup. And nope, we need to set start point. There we go. Alright. And so there needs to be a uniformity of law from the top government down to the lower governments. And they're just refusing to do that. They all want to do their own thing. And that's a violation of Article 6. But that's the whole point of the Constitution, is that they're claiming that a constitutional republic is the better form of government. And we never implemented it. We don't know if the American experiment would work. And that's the whole problem, is because people are going to claim after America is destroyed, well, the American experiment failed. It's because we were conquered by the enemy, because we didn't follow the Constitution. In the Book of Mormon, the Laws of Mosiah were given as a constitutional republic for the Nephites as King Mosiah was retiring and said, my sons don't want to be king, and so if the firstborn doesn't want it, I can't give it to the secondborn, because the firstborn might come back and claim that he has the right to the title, and there'd be fighting and blah blah blah. And so he said, I'm going to create a whole new government. It's going to be a constitutional government with the Laws of Mosiah, and judges will determine whether the law has been followed or not. But then the enemy came in, the secret Gadianton band of robbers, murderers and thieves, and infiltrated, rose up, took over, and changed the laws, just like America had done. Interesting comparison match, isn't it? I've gone over this with the history videos of the church. And so the concept of Christ sitting on a throne, giving out orders and directions to be followed, is not really the government that Joseph Smith was intending to occur. And that's the Christian manipulated version of events. That Christians will bow to an authoritarian leader who has their best interests and security in mind as he murders his enemies. And how are we able to distinguish this between authoritative government? Oh, because he's Christ. Oh, okay. Gotcha. No, there has to be a uniform system that doesn't take away agency. The Constitution has 3 categories by which people are to be guaranteed as rights, and of which people are to be judged for violations thereof. They are life, liberty, property. And so, yes, slavery is a violation of the Constitution. Long before the amendment to stop slavery. It didn't stop Brigham Young from putting it in his Deseret Constitution, as we're having to vote in this election as to whether we the people want to choose whether we want to have slavery or not. As if we can decide as a people whether those who are slaves already in Utah are to continue to be slaves. What a disaster. hold on here while I take care of this. Take a little longer because of the way they set this up. So yeah, if you've got elevator music, I'm almost finished here. And so how do you design a system that way? Well, like my mother in the introduction that I told you concerning the economy, she said this is the best system that we can come up with. Well, you get the same thing with Mormons saying, well, the Constitution's perfect and we need to cling to it and have slavery and have a Republican Party government. Nobody even bothers to read. And so how do you do it? Do you have legislatures that say, oh, I think we want to give this business $1 billion to come to Utah, and we'll give them tax breaks for 5 years? Well, that's discriminative. Why aren't you doing it for all businesses? See? So we're already experiencing so many problems with the current system that they all claim is the best we can come up with. No, it's not. That's where a constitutional republic comes in. Is that had the forefathers understood this, because they didn't, because they thought that they would establish the system of officers who would then make laws, execute the laws, and judge the laws with the three branches in accordance with the Bill of Rights, where it talks about life, liberty, and property, and in the Declaration of Independence as well. Although in the Declaration of Independence it's the pursuit of happiness, but that is defined in the Bill of Rights as property. And so, yeah, we have so many problems because nobody thought to organize the Constitution in such a manner. And so, in regards to human life, well, we have pro-lifers, don't we? Except under Trump, we're now realizing that pro-lifers are going, I think I'm going to redefine pro-life to be pro-life in the sense of human life, but this whole abortion thing is what I'm anti of. And so there's pro-lifers who no longer want to call themselves pro-lifers, they want to call them anti-abortionists instead, to distinguish between human life versus pro-life, as to be defined as anti-abortion. But again, that Christian woman on the show yesterday did not grasp the concept that you can't redefine something and expect everybody to understand you. When you go around telling everybody, oh yeah, I'm pro-life, they're going to think you're anti-abortion, which she is in this particular case. But it causes confusion when you mix definitions or alter definitions. It's part of the conquering that an enemy nation does, or enemies to the nation do. And so, do we give life to human beings, if we're going to continue on with the abortion situation? Or do we give life, precedence to life, for the embryo? And it's a heated debate because everybody's battling over the conclusion. The woman's now pregnant. She doesn't want the baby, and people are saying, no, she must have the baby. She's killing the life. Murder. And so these abortion clinics are murder facilities, factories, baby killing machines, machine operations. And again, they're arguing the conclusion. This is why we need to have sex ed. Because what caused the woman to get pregnant? A man. How did the man get her pregnant? Well, there's the scientific process. But was it a violation of her life, liberty, and property? If it was, she needs to abort the baby if she so chooses. Do you see where we're going here? There are no suburban housewives legally and lawfully married to one husband who, in the marriage where they are united to have a family, right? Then all of a sudden she decides, you know what? I'm not gonna have this baby husband of mine. And then secretly slaughters the baby by getting an abortion. As the husband is out of children. Hey, we were supposed to have kids and a family together. I'm working to pay for a family and you slaughtered our child. Is that the scenario that is happening? That conservatives are trying to convince you of? Well, yes. That's exactly the scenario that conservatives aren't actually specifically telling you, but that's when they argue, oh, the fetus must be born. The woman is an evil person for wanting an abortion. They don't let the woman or pro-choicers understand that they're trying to deceive you and trying to cause you harm, as you already know the harm that's going to cause because you were raped. That's why you don't want the baby. Or you were a victim of sexual incest, which is also a form of rape. All the different kinds there are, but you know, we need to establish the age of an adult now. Do we go down as far as puberty? That's how it was anciently. Once you hit puberty, you were now considered an adult. And they would have ritual performances, either in the religion or in the society, for the transition from a boy into a man and a girl into a woman. But we've sort of said, oh no, we don't want to take care of our kids. We're going to give them to schools to take care of them for us, so that we don't have to do any education of our kids. And thus, when a coronavirus hits and we're all forced to stay at home, the kids drive us crazy because we don't know how to take care of them. And so as a result, parents then assume, oh, my kids are too young to be adults, because they're not being trained to be adults. And they say, oh, they need to be kids. They need to play and not learn. Okay, what are the consequences of doing that? Yeah, you got all these horny kids who are not educated, and chaos ensues. And so all of this needs to be incorporated in a better government society. That you don't take away the rights of life, liberty, and property from people. everybody has rights to basic necessities such as food, clothing, shelter, transportation, communication, and a whole list of others that I've developed beyond the comprehension of others who have created the basic necessities list. I don't even think communication is on anybody else's list. There might be somebody who's come up with it, but that's also part of what I'll get into in the language section video, is a need for a unifying language, because right now we're segregated. We have over 100 different languages, and people can't understand each other without an interpreter. Well, when you get Zion created, you're going to have to deal with that situation. And so language becomes essential for the new kingdom. And so Brigham Young, what he was doing was trying to create a coded language that nobody else in the world would understand. That's different, because everybody, for the most part, spoke English. But this is a situation where we need to reverse the Tower of Babel story and return to a single language that all can understand. And so a constitution needs to be set up so that nobody is given preference over another. No party, no group, no individual is given higher priority than another. But you don't want to hold them back at the same time. So, for example, this is more for the economy, but yeah, the government needs to allow the religion, the economy, and the language to be equalized. So we'll hold off on my analogy or example for the economy section. And so that's basically it. You have a system that the laws are enshrined in a constitution under life, liberty, property. And that should be all it is. Everybody is guaranteed life, liberty, and property, and therefore you can't violate people's life, liberty, and property. Violations are to receive punishments equal to the crime. So if somebody takes somebody's life, the punishment, death penalty. And so this concept of, we can't take human life, which is a very interesting thing, because Republicans who are pro-lifers have no problem executing a person who's a criminal. Whereas Democrats who are pro-choice are saying, no, we don't want, they're pro-human life, even though they're pro-choice. And so there's some conflict, division within each group, as that's intended to destroy the group for that purpose. That's why you can't have party government. And so in order to identify whether people should smoke, first you have to establish, is smoking harmful? If it's harmful, then you're not supposed to allow it, because a person who then smokes is attempting suicide and attempting murder at the same time. They're posing a threat to themselves and to others. And so, yes, smoking needs to be banned, or a new form of smoking that is not harmful to others. The vaping machines were supposed to be protecting others, but there's all sorts of chemicals and junk that harms the vapor. As somebody tried to sabotage that, also. Yeah, if you can provide a system or a product, and this has to do with the economy, but that can be safe for people, then yeah, there won't be any issue. Unfortunately, then there's the discussion of marijuana, which in and of itself is harmless, other than the fact that it slows the brain processing down. You become slow of thought. And it's good for medical purposes when you have a hyperactive brain. You need to slow that brain down so that the person can be normalized to think clearly and not pose a danger to themselves or others, such as having seizures, which is a hyperactive brain. And thus the liquid marijuana, the THC is a legitimate treatment for those who have seizures, because it helps regulate the body so that the brain doesn't go out of control and spark a seizure. So yeah, you've got to establish the age of an adult, and it has to be equal across the board, so that you don't have situations of, oh, you did a Romeo rape, where you're an adult and she's still a child. That type of situation. You need to have clear boundaries, and it requires a complete change in societal thinking in order to say, hey, you know what? I am supposed to have rights to life, liberty, and property. Oh, but I also got to give them to others. And so that takes away a lot of the incentive to want to take away others' agency. You have to actually give people agency. And when they violate agency, when they violate life, liberty, and property, then they get punished. And it's a clear-cut scenario. There is no confusion, there's no gray area anymore, because we haven't redefined things. Person took away this person's life. They took away their liberty. They took away their property. There has to be a punishment equal to the crime, because restoration needs to be made. And that comes into the economy part of this. So, alrighty, that's the governmental system. And you're saying, well, how does the crime? Well, there's no need. Constitution. That's it. That's all you need. And so, if you understood the learning of the Jews on who the Christ is supposed to be, and then you looked at all of the prophecies about this Christ, and then you would then think, wait a minute, he's not actually going to be ruling. He's just an overseer. That's the role he would play. He'd still have to do work in under the economy section, as I'll outline for you.